Hello everyone, my name's Matthew Wainwright and I'm a time tunneler. Now, a few videos ago, I did a video about how art can be used to tell the story of history and how sometimes you can find fantastic stories and pieces of artwork from around the world. One of the most famous pieces of artwork that tells a story from history is called the Bayeux Tapestry. I don't know if I'm saying that quite right. But it's an enormous long piece of material. It's not actually a tapestry, it's a piece of embroidery. And it tells the story of events surrounding something very, very important that happened in this country in the year 1066. I don't know if any of you know that date, very, very famous. It's the Norman conquest of England and the Battle of Hastings. Now, you might have heard about this, you might have learned about it in school, but you might be scratching your head and thinking, well, why is that? Very interesting. It's okay, it's a king, it's a battle, it's some dates, not very important. Well, the Norman conquest of England was very important because the Normans brought with them from France lots of their language and lots of their culture that still survives to this day in England. Before that date, the people who lived in England were people called the Saxons or the Anglo-Saxons. One of their most famous kings was Alfred the Great. You may have heard of him. But anyway, in 1066, William, Duke of Normandy, invaded England at Hastings on the south coast and fought a great battle at Hastings, and then went on to fight more battles as he sort of fought his way across England, eventually made his way to London. He had to go the long way round because there was an army in his way, and he was crowned King of England on Christmas Day in 1066. Now, I'm not actually going to talk to you about the Battle of Hastings in 1066 because that's great, big battles, very important things happening, big changes in English history. But as a historical novelist and a writer for children, I'm usually more interested in the slightly strange, weird stories that surround pieces of history. And I found something absolutely fascinating that's happened a few years after 1066, but you've got to remember, okay, you've got to imagine, put yourself in that mindset of there's the Saxon people living in England and all these Norman, French invaders coming in and lots of arguments and the Normans taking over and there were rebellions and Saxon people going, no, we don't want to be ruled by you, and the Normans saying, no, we want to rule you, we've conquered you now, you must do as you're told. And in the middle of all of that, in the year 1091 in London, so 25 years after the Battle of Hastings in London, there was an immense tornado that swept through the city, destroyed 600 houses, we're told, and destroyed a very famous church called St. Mary le Bow, or St. Mary of the Bow being arches, because it was very, very famous for its crypt, the underground bit of the church, which had these beautiful arches that were built in the Norman style. Now, St. Mary le Bow Church was built by the Normans, as was the original St. Paul's Cathedral, as was the original Tower of London. It was built by the Normans as fortifications and churches and castles to sort of stamp their mark on the capital, stamp their mark on the city. But you can imagine what it felt like for the Saxon people living in London at that time. They were feeling like, oh, there's these invaders have come in and they're taking over and they're bossing us around and they're bullying us and they speak French and we don't understand it and we don't like this. And there are all these seething tensions going on. Well, in the middle of all this, can you imagine what it must have felt like for this enormous tornado to come sweeping through the city? Now, I don't know if you've seen videos of tornadoes. I don't know if you've seen a tornado up close for real, but I've seen some videos online, never seen one in real life, and it was pretty terrifying. The groaning of the wind and the pattering of pebbles and dirt on the windows of houses as they get blown around, and sky changing colour, sometimes going yellow and dark, and smatterings of rain, and then this great wind that just comes through, and it doesn't come through just like gusts, like it comes through and it's just a sustained gust that just lasts and lasts and lasts, and it knocks down houses and rips out roofs and does all kinds of things. Normally we associate that kind of tornado with America and with films and foreign places, but one happened right here. Now, there's a scale for tornadoes called the Toro scale, tornado force scale. I think it goes up to about T10 or T11 or something like that. But this tornado, historians reckon, was about T8. So that's right up the end of the scale. It was massive, absolutely enormous. But the interesting thing about this is, from my perspective, as a writer, as someone who's interested in history, is we only have 2 records of this tornado happening. So we've only got two people who wrote about it after the fact, and I've got them here, and I'm going to read them out to you. So the first one was done by a guy called William of Malmesbury, and he said, "A clash of conflicting winds coming from the southeast smashed over 600 houses in London on the 17th of October. Churches and houses, enclosures and walls were left in heaps. The violence of the winds produced a yet worse disaster. It raised the roof of the church of St Mary le Bow and killed 2 people there. The timbers and beams were carried through the air, an amazing sight for those watching from afar, but a terrifying one for those standing nearby, lest they should be killed. 4 timbers, 26 feet long, it's longer than a bus, were driven into the ground with such force that scarcely 4 feet protruded." That's less than my height. So you can imagine a bus being driven into the ground so that only that much of it was sticking out again by the wind. "It was remarkable to see how they penetrated the hard surface of the public street in the same arrangement as if they had been laced by the craftsman's skill, being an obstacle to passers-by. They were cut off at ground level since they could not be removed in any other way." So they couldn't even get these roof timbers out of the ground, they just had to cut them off because people couldn't get around them. And there was one more account by a man called John of Worcester, who says, "Moreover," they like to say moreover back in those days, "on Friday, 16th of October, some confusion about the date, a very powerful whirlwind from the southwest shook and destroyed more than 600 houses and many churches in London. Raging through the church of St Mary le Bow, it killed 2 men, raised up and carried through the air for some time its roof and timbers, until 6 of the beams, in the same order in which they had previously held the roof in position, were sunk so deeply into the earth that there was visible the 7th part of some and the 8th part of others." So just the top. They were 27 or 28 feet long. And that's it. That's all we know about this tornado. That's all we have. That's the record that we have. So scientists have kind of estimated how powerful it could be. But as a writer, I read something like that and my brain goes, I can do something with that. A tornado that swept through this city, that was in turmoil after the invasion by a hostile force. What would it be like for a child living then? Who were those 2 people who were killed in St Mary le Bow Church? What were they doing there? Why was nobody else killed? What happened? What could the effect have been? Remember, at that time, many people were very religious, and lots of people would have said, this must be an act of God. God must have sent this tornado to punish those Normans. And maybe they hoped that the Normans would go away, but of course they didn't, as we know from history. But that just goes to show how a big historical event, followed by something quite interesting and very dramatic, can result in the germ of a story turning over in your mind. And that's definitely started a story turning over in my mind. And in a couple of years' time, you might see a book coming out of it, all being well. So you heard it here first. Now, your writing challenge for this week, I want you to look on the website with your teacher or with your parents at home, whoever you're with. I want you to download the activity pack. There's some resources there. There's those descriptions, there's some pictures and things, there's some information. And from that, I want you to write the beginning of a story about a child living in London when this tornado descends. Think what some of the arguments might have been between Saxon and Norman neighbours. Think how those tensions might have grown as the storm grows. What happened in the storm? Maybe you might think, well, here's some information about those 2 people who might have been killed. Maybe there was a bit of a story there. Maybe they were friends. Maybe they were arguing. What were they doing? What happened? And what effect did it have on the people around them? So, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. And as always, happy time tunneling. Bye-bye.